welcome to the Tech Czars, a special series brought to you by CNBC TV 18 in collaboration with AWS. The unexpected surge in tech investment driven by the pandemic has led to a massive change in the way organizations are operating. Now, as per a KPMG report, COVID-19 has forced one of the biggest surges in tech investment in history, and this somewhat unplanned rush to digitization has brought along several challenges. Through the featured conversations in the series, we decode how the business landscape has been disrupted by technology and how enterprises are turning challenges into opportunities. On this very first episode, as we talk about what the pandemic has done to the insurance sector, and more importantly, how the insurance sector is using technology to benefit. Joining us today are Puneet Chandok, the President, India and South Asia at AWS, and Vibha Padalkar, the CEO and MD at HDFC Life. Vibha, Puneet, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Vibha, let me start by talking to you about the kind of transformation that you've seen. I mean, HDFC Life, even prior to the pandemic, has been on a path of digital transformation. In fact, I remember you said a few years ago that you were at the tipping point as far as digitization is concerned. Where do you believe, as an organization, do you find yourself today when it comes to digital maturity? And more importantly, what has that meant for you in terms of being a differentiator and a competitive advantage?
Thank you, Shereen. Really happy to be having this conversation because digital really has become very core and center to all evolving business models, and insurance is no different. Traditionally, perhaps one is right in saying that while we were customer focused, but not necessarily customer focused via digital. And also the emphasis back in time was more distributor focused, product focused, and so on. Now we're moving from being just a B2B to moving from B to B to C. And at HDFC Life, like you said, we've been working on this journey over the past 5 to 7 years, wherein we've tried to solve for largely the questions that are revolving around, how do I give a simple onboarding journey? How do I give, say, an integrated partner experience or a frictionless service? If I'm tying up with a new partner, how can I have insurance in a box for them? How do I get my customers to experience personalized service because we have a lot of their data, or can get through allied sources their data? And how do I embed themselves into their buying journeys on some other ecosystem? These are some of the things that we're solving for. And I'm happy to share that we have managed to make a lot of inroads into our core offerings. And this is not just peripheral or gratuitous. So, for example, we've tied up with lots of new ecosystem partners, and our term journey, for example, today, which is like a 3-click journey, very simple onboarding and very suitable for millennials. And you also have the Zerodhas and PhonePays who are our distribution partners. So the new ecosystem partners, along with this innovation, along with the end customer who is probably a millennial or definitely a younger person, it is a winning combination. Another example that you could take is in terms of all the bots that we have, whether it's a voice bot, chat bot, and everyone has it. But really, the differentiator here is in terms of the AIML within, and also what is the kind of accuracy levels that we're able to answer, at least definitely simple, but even slightly more involved queries. And the final point is in terms of validation, because how do you create moats? Your products can be copied. Brands, give or take, the senior brands are reasonably, very similar in terms of customer recall and trust. So this starts becoming a very significant moat because it's bespoke. You're trying to understand where the shoe is pinching for the customer as well as the partner, and you're creating solutions that are not just in a sandbox or in a lab. But you're getting that feedback on what's working, and out of 10 bets, maybe 2 might work, and we will bury them and start all over again. I think that's where we are today in HDFC Life's journey.
Well, very important aspects that you've raised there, Vibha. I'll try and dig a little deeper into each one of those in just a second, but I like the way that you've highlighted what technology is actually doing for life and how it is proving to be a significant differentiator. As you pointed out, this is the way for you to build moats around the business and ensure that you stay ahead of your competitors. But Puneet, let me ask you, as Vibha pointed out, they've been on this journey for the last 5 to 7 years now and perhaps have reached some sort of a tipping point. But for the industry, and I don't mean just the insurance industry, but I mean for the BFSI sector in India, we have again seen the last decade has, various degrees of digital adoption. But do you believe that 2021 has, in that sense, been a key inflection point?
No, first of all, Shereen and Vibha, just thrilled to be part of this conversation. So thank you for having me. Let me answer your question, Shereen, in two parts. One, I think just what's really happening in the insurance or the banking or the financial services sector, as you said. And then second, what is technology really doing and what has really changed in the last year or two in terms of technology. Now, if you think about what's happening in the industry, especially in insurance, and this is relevant for financial services, and Vibha touched on most of this, but there are three shifts that at least I'm seeing. One, there's a generational shift in terms of customer expectations, right? They're increasing faster than ever. Second, Vibha kind of touched on this. You have these digital natives or insurtechs or fintechs that are coming in who are bringing in a very superior and hyper-personalized customer experience, which is, again, across the insurance value chain and almost disrupting incumbents. And then third, I think if you look at legacy or large players, right, there's a challenge of returning to profitable growth while carrying the burden of legacy or technical debt that they've had for the longest time, right? So those are the three big shifts or challenges. Now, in terms of what's changed or what's happened in the last couple of years, I think the three big moves that at least I'm seeing. First, I think this move towards digital channels and products, including direct-to-consumer products. They're becoming the primary channel for customer acquisition and engagement in industries which were largely dependent on distributors and agent broker models, right? So that's a big shift. Second, I think financial services and insurance in particular is now becoming a data business, right? Data is exploding across the three Vs, the volume, the velocity, the variety. We're creating more data every hour today than we were creating in an entire year 20 years ago, right? So that's the scale. And now financial services and insurance firms are starting to understand the customer at the level of, or the segment of one, as we call it, right? Which is they're moving from being transaction focused to relationship focused. For example, underwriting could be a lot more personal than ever, right? If I drive my car 10,000 kilometers a year, why should I pay the same premium as somebody who drives 100,000 kilometers a year, right? And that's where the change is happening. And then the third technology shift that's happened in the last couple of years is AIML. And again, Vibha touched on this, but it's becoming mainstream in insurance. Insurance traditionally has been a low-touch business, right? Policyholders will move to a new product on an average in 2 to 3 years, and there's very limited brand loyalty. But with AIML and data today, that's changing, right? So insurers are building brand loyalty. They're analyzing customer data. They're tracking buying signals to anticipate customer needs even before the customer is ready to make the purchase. And this promise of being with the right customer at the right time with the right product is happening for sure, right? So a fundamental shift happening in the industry and some bold moves by the players there.
So I just want to take that forward and link it back to what you said, Vibha. And as Puneet was pointing out, I mean, it is all about data increasingly. So when you talk about being more customer centric as opposed to more product centric today, how are you going about aligning what the data is telling you? How are you going about building a much more customer centric and product relevant organization backed by what data is telling you? And how are you using technology to ensure you deliver on that promise?
So on data, we're way ahead in terms of setting up a separate data labs in Bangalore. Because even in terms of talent, getting a different kind of talent, being able to retain that talent, excite that talent, give them use cases, which helped us. So whole host of things that we've been able to do. For example, we have EMOLISERS and SENTILISERS built by this team. What that does is that, as against traditional, wherein somebody has written an email or physical or called up, just based on the words used, the pitch, the language used, the tenor, and so on, we're able to pick these cases out of the line and to have a supervisor look at it or somebody else look at it, because these are irate cases that will spiral out of control. So being able to do that, some of the others that are fairly routine don't even require human intervention. So those can just be addressed, and again through AIML, to be able to just go straight through, what's my fund balance, or who's my nominee, or things like that. In a 15-year policy, you'll have a lot of these regular questions. that don't require humans to answer that. And the others, with use of these EMOLISERS or SENTILISERS, which make it the differentiator, like what Puneet mentioned, or the straight through journey, again based on data, the 3-click journey that I mentioned to you. Why do I need to ask the data? And he or she is right in saying that you already have my data, so why are you asking me this data again? And also triangulating it with a lot of data that's available. Data is the new oil. To say that I have a good sense, especially on the new ecosystem partners, wherein there's very little underwriting that is possible and is expected. So you're triangulating that to get a good sense of a customer you've never met or will never meet, and yet being able to underwrite risk. So to give you a sense, during the heydays with Airtel, we were writing something like 30,000 policies a day, or on a Paytm, 1.1 lakh customer lives covered. So those are the kind of volumes that we are talking about. I'm sure we'll talk about cloud down the line.
Yeah.
But also other things, for example, we have face recognition. So again, given the tenor of our policies, which you're talking about 10, 15 years, the guy who's given his KYC data is not going to look like that when he walks into a branch. So even from a risk management perspective, for the person sitting across, what the person sitting from our end is looking at is through facial recognition and to have a good idea as to a 20-year-old person, what does that person look like now after 20 years? Those sorts of things, which are both exciting as well as for us to have real use cases. And last example is the entire opportunity on medical tech. So rather than asking our customers to go in and into hospitals and get their tests done, especially for term, how can I use technology to figure out, does he have diabetes, a retina scan? And we're also on the cusp of solving for various other illnesses, which traditional wisdom says that he or she has to walk in to a medical center. But we are figuring out proxies through digital for us to be able to underwrite at least lower levels of risk. So really touching the entire gamut, and all of this is towards how do I make it easier for the customer.
Yeah, and I think what you spoke of previously, a customer consent architecture, which you believe is going to lead to the next generation of customer centricity. I think that's the point that you were building on. But Puneet, let's take that forward. What is very, very clear, and the focus seems to be on more and more personalization as far as companies like Vibhas are concerned. Now, from a tech point of view, what have you seen happen on that front? And more importantly, with the changes and the advancements that we are seeing, both on the AI/ML side, what can we expect in terms of trends and disruption?
No, Shereen, I'll pick from where Vibha kind of started off, right? And let's start with customers. And there's a term that we use very often at Amazon called divine discontent, which basically means customer expectations are never static. They continuously go up, and people have a voracious appetite for a better way, right? And yesterday's wow will very quickly become today's ordinary. And what's happening today is customers are expecting the same level of user experience, convenience, and quality, irrespective of the product they're buying, right? Doesn't matter if they're buying insurance or banking or something on Amazon or the OTT app or a cab app, right? Doesn't matter. They want the same experience. And to actually solve for that experience, I think what companies need to do is really think about data and AIML in a different way, right? And that's why I started by saying insurance. Everybody says most businesses are tech businesses. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but most businesses today are data businesses. And for you to become a data business, you need what we call data agility, which is the ability to actually harness data as an asset. Data is not a problem, it's an asset, right? And if you can really build that data agility, you can reduce the cost of curiosity in your business, which basically means your employees can turn ideas into products and services much easier, much faster, which can be a true competitive advantage. And the foundation for this data agility, or all the stuff that we're going to talk about around AI/ML, is the cloud, right? So we're working with insurers and financial services players to really help them use data much better. And we're helping build what we call a data flywheel, which basically starts with the ability to develop new products and services quickly, and then you continuously iterate on them. Now, what that does is that leads to a better customer experience, which in turn leads to more usage and more valuable data. And that's how this flywheel then turns, right? Which is more products and services, better experience, more data, and then you use that data to fuel more innovation and more products and services. I think I can't think of a better example than this because Vibha is here, right? HDFC Life, I think one of the personalized recommendation engine that's been built on AWS is a terrific example of really bringing data and AI/ML together to solve for customers' needs even before they're thinking of them.
So let me just get Vibha to articulate for the viewers who are watching this on what this flywheel eventually means as far as businesses are concerned. What does it mean in terms of cutting down costs? What does it mean in terms of cutting down the time to onboard a customer, Vibha? I mean, give us some tangible results that you've been able to see on account of adopting AIML so effectively within the organization.
Yeah, so really the entire gamut of how we acquire, retain, and service customers, AIML is throughout. We were one of the early, we made the early transition onto cloud storage computing. This has phenomenally increased our scalability, and a lot of things that we do today would not have been possible had that journey not happened and that leap of faith. I mentioned the kind of numbers on just one partner in the new ecosystem, but many more such, and that's become an integral part. If you were to look at some of the examples, the entire data lake that we have, and triangulating that makes us we know fairly well which is the product in this particular channel or sub channel that a customer buys first. What does he buy next, when does he buy it or she buy it, which family member, why did they surrender, why, every aspect of it. So you're closely tracking, because you also don't want to carpet bomb the customer, and that's what largely we've been doing in the financial services space. So how do you differentiate, almost to the point of saying, hey, I'll not call you at all, but I know I can partner with you because I know what you're looking for and how you are progressing in your life. The 360 degree of the view, and how do you simplify it to the person right in the front who is servicing the customer. It could be a call center agent, it could be someone at our branch. So what we've done is to convert all that data into maybe 3 simple emoticons as to what do we think is the temperature of the customer. Simple. Is it a smiley? Is it a indifferent? Is he frowning? So all of that, and how can we change that at this customer level? So that's really our end game, to be able to track and to understand and to be able to solve for it. Another example in terms of core is that when we do underwriting today on our savings-led underwriting, we have built our own AIML engine, wherein we are able to differentiate different kinds of risk. And this tool is almost 100%, 0.003% differential between a human underwriter and what our tool is learning. So what that does is to leave our humans, the employees, to look at more ambiguous cases and to not have to bother and give them a highway in terms of onboarding. Puneet mentioned this because the experience that they're comparing when they're buying insurance is not with other insurers. They're comparing it with all sorts of other services on digital platforms. So that's what the customer has in mind, and there's immense impatience in that, and more so when you're relating to a brand that increases manifold because that expectation is there. So how do we do this differently, wherein we do ask questions, wherein we need to ask questions, but for the rest of the population, so it's not a one size fits all. So that's really making a lot of difference. Not that we have all the answers. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because there is a lot of data that is not available today, even when the customer might be okay to share that data for a differentiated service. So it's some way away, but certainly it's a roadmap that we see very, very possible in the medium term.
So let's talk about that roadmap then, Puneet. As you look at where the industry finds itself today, and more importantly, where you believe it's likely to be 5 years down the line, what do you believe the design of the roadmap needs to be? And what kind of investments and what kind of spending do you envisage going forward?
No, I think Vibha said it well, right? I think we're both saying the same thing, which is there are fundamental shifts happening in this industry driven by customers now expecting a very different level of experience, a lot of innovation happening with the new digital innovative players. And then third, I think just digital becoming a way of life, right? Digital and technology is no longer on the periphery. It's actually at the center. It's actually the heart of businesses today. In terms of the future, I would just say, I think there are 2-3 things that will happen. I think first, we would see insurers, financial services players really modernize legacy systems to bring in agility, right? And we're starting to see this. I'll give you an example. Bajaj Allianz General Insurance, another insurance provider, they've really taken their retail lines like travel and health onto the cloud. Again, just fundamentally giving them competitive differentiators, including agility, scale. Second, we will see a lot of innovation, as Vibha said, around just the digital experience, the onboarding, starting from onboarding to KYC to actual claims, the entire journey becoming much easier for customers, becoming much more real and much more useful, if you will. I'll give you another example, Policy Bazaar. They're leveraging Amazon Polly, which is a text-to-speech service. But basically what they've been able to do is 41% of their sales have no interference or no connection with agents, right? So that allows them to really scale. And then third, I think we both spoke, all three of us have spoken about data, right? I think on the cloud, what we are actually helping customers do is very quickly build, train, deploy analytical models. And as Vibha said, right, the underlying technology that we're all building on is evolving every day, right? So it's one step forward, sometimes half a step backwards. But that allows you to iterate, that allows you to innovate, that allows you to experiment, that allows you to collect more data. And on the basis of that, you can keep this innovation cycle going, right? So my view is, Shereen, a lot more innovation, a lot more digital, and a lot more delightful experiences for customers across the financial services industry.
Well, that certainly will be the hope as far as customers are concerned. To Vibha's point, nobody wants to even stop for a minute or two more than they actually have to. So delighting the customer is going to have to be key. But Vibha, coming back to to Puneet's point about the need for constant innovation, and as far as a company like yours is concerned, as you look ahead into the next 5 years, how are you solving not just for today but building more importantly for the future, keeping tech at the heart of it?
So, the end game that we say in the medium term is that we are a tech company and we also sell insurance. So that is how we're looking at ourselves in the not too distant future. Yes, some of the obstacles that we have today, I mentioned data, access for us to be able to solve for the underwriting piece, that will get solved. We have no doubt about that. So that's the end game, Shereen. In terms of from now till the end game, what we do see is that we're building even our products, for example, or the ideation is no longer wherein there is a afterthought of how do you get this onto a digital platform, but it is keeping digital core. So every conversation has digital, and not only with the insurance we sell, but every process in the organization. Right from how we service our employees, how we have predictive attrition predictive analysis, for example, of our employees, how do we have fraud analysis for customers, how do we look at the claim settlement, how do we look at even as mundane as bank reconciliations, which are now done by our bots. So every process, so there are no no-go areas wherein we feel that we do need to have only humans do it. So that combination, and wherein humans are doing more evolved aspects, is how we would like to see our workforce also changing. Also, hybrid workplaces are here to stay, and that also augurs well to that ecosystem of it just augurs very well to both how our employees are going to be working increasingly hybrid, as well as our partners. So the partners will continue to be the intermediaries largely, and how are we able to sell end to end, and that we've already solved right at the beginning during phase 1 of the pandemic. Wise, which is our platform, it is you can do everything from insurance solicitation to issuing of a policy entirely through non-physical contact, and very smooth, very it's low code. It is people are able to do it on the move, and those sorts of solutioning help us, wherein if the customer is willing and the partner is willing, we have the tool. Even at the other end of the spectrum, which we've not spoken about, is the senior citizens, wherein we were the first ones to launch through facial recognition the existence certificate, wherein otherwise senior citizens had to walk into branches. Seems simple now when it is copied further and starts becoming fairly well entrenched. But when you're the first mover, it gives us a new kind of high of having solved for something that is, again, very core to the reason why we are here to service customers. So, but lots more work to be done, and lots of ability for us to partner solve for. We do have a futurance program wherein we evaluate what a lot of startups are doing, both in India and abroad, and give them our data. We have the data, they have the idea, and maybe they'll do a portion of this entire chain very, very well. So for us to try that out, to see whether we can move it into production. So really, it is multi-pronged in terms of our aspirations to become that tech company.
Well, to Puneet's point, Puneet, here you go. Tech company that also sells insurance. So every company is a tech
I love
company
that.
today,
Yeah.
huh?
It is
but
true.
Vibha, I
It is
just want
true.
it in many ways is. But Vibha, just two data points that I wanted from you, and that would be interesting for viewers to note as well. When you talk about fraud analysis, take me through the benefits that you've been able to see since the adoption of technology, specifically as far as that particular metric is concerned. And more importantly, when you talk about collaborating with the startup ecosystem, how do you see that moving forward for you?
Right. On the first point on fraud, extremely useful to use both data and digital as a combination, and also the especially the ML part of it, wherein now we have a predictive analysis, which tells us that the new business that we have written, which policies have a higher propensity to either lapse, and worse, to defraud us as the insurer. In a lot of cases, last year, for example, if we cancelled about 200 crores of business, which would have otherwise gone through. So what happens is the new business is sourced, that is fine, but our AIML is working behind the scenes to throw this up. We will try and reach out to the customer and physically meet him or her and so on to validate. And if it's validated, that's fine. In most of the cases, Shireen, the customer does not come forward, which just revalidates that there is something that is not quite right or kosher with this policy. So that's one example. For example, in terms of the propensity to lapse a policy is detrimental both to the customer as well as to us. So how do you reach out? How do you handhold them with, almost with kid gloves, to say it's in your interest to pay this policy, it's a long term and so on, so that they don't just throw in the towel at the first instance of maybe some financial distress or change of mind and so on. So that's the second one. And third is at the exit stage in terms of claims. So again, we are able to, through exactly this method, wherein we are able to have a propensity, wherein we know there is a high indication that this is a fraudulent claim, for us to pass that on to investigators with a different lens. Not that we were not investigating earlier, we were. But if you have 100 rupees for investigation, which ones do you investigate, and which one, through all this data, is no point investigating for various reasons. So you're a lot more focused. In the rest of the customers, you don't trouble them. You give them, the claim settlement, which will hopefully delight overall, and it's the reason why we are in this business. So that happens fairly well. So these use cases do help big time in terms of risk management, and the machine is just learning more and more as this. We started about 4 years ago, and we're just getting more and more accurate and a lot better. Um, your second question is on the Futurance program. Again, whole host of cases that we have, that we continue to evaluate. We do have a separate team, so I don't meddle, because agility is the key, an open mind is the key, and I don't want it needs to be blue skies. So there's a nimble team, my executive members, and they evaluate startups, evaluate use cases. What we have is two things. One is data, like I mentioned, and second is domain experience. We know what would work and what might work, might be down the line, but not here and now, or what might just not work because we've been there and done it. So we're able to sift through that and then engage these fresh ideas into our world, and see that developing. So, for example, a lot of things on the Meditech part, we have been able to make a lot of breakthroughs in that area, which is very core to what we do.
Well, white spaces, blue skies, it's all happening. But Punita, coming back to you now, speaking of one of the key challenges, and since we're talking about the explosion of data and the use of data, the risks associated with that, and through the course of the pandemic, just because of the sheer adoption of digital transactions, we have seen an increase in data-related issues as well. So, how do you secure or future-proof businesses, especially in the BFSI space, from potential data-related threats?
Yeah, listen, I think, as we all know, right, insurance is one of the most regulated industries in the world. Yet, in order to stay competitive, insurers need to push the boundaries of innovation, and you have to experiment and try things, as Vibha said, while complying with the strict security requirements around data and all the regulation, right? And Shereen, at AWS, security is our topmost priority. We understand security, regulatory, and compliance obligations of financial institutions. And we've worked with industries, the most complex organizations in the industry, both in India and globally, right, to meet their requirements across their cloud journey or technology journey. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have developed something that we call the AWS Security Assurance Program, basically, which helps us demonstrate the security controls and how do they align with all the compliance standards that are out there. We also offer an AWS Compliance Center for financial services customers, again, focused on regulatory requirements that impact the industry and get ahead of the regulation versus solving for it later. And as Vibha said, right, the data lake example she spoke about, the personalized engine that she spoke about, all of these solutions and technologies meet all the regulatory requirements, right, including using AWS services and building on the cloud. So again, just it's top post priority for both customers like Vibha and for providers like us, and constantly working on it.
So, Vibha, let me ask you then, in terms of tech capabilities in-house, of course, you've got your partners on board, the likes of AWS and others, but in terms of tech capabilities in-house, I mean, how large is the team? What is the hiring plan? And what's the future investment plan specifically on technology?
So we follow a partnership model. It is a combination of in-house people as well as all the new things that we do are again a combination of people in our. We have a digital labs team. We have our data labs in Bangalore, like I mentioned, and we also have our sales tech. Those people in our company that know very, very deeply as to what will work with the partner, for example, or with financial consultants. So these three are largely the sets of people who do new things within our organization as far as technology is concerned. And then there are partners, and partners also vary because there are different skill sets. And yes, we look at a combination of who's doing new things as well as who's partnered with us, because there's a bit of legacy in terms of memory, what was done, why, and so on. Interestingly, apart from Futurance, which is very core to what we do in terms of new ideas, now we've also started having people write into us. Those who have ideas or who are working and who might not formally come through the Futurance program, just reach out to us, and we are always happy and open to have conversations. We also, including me, it could be through some of our consultants, we also talk to our counterparts, digital insurance counterparts across the world. It could be the likes of, I'm just taking a name, similar to that model of a Lemonade. So we follow very closely what is a Lemonade doing, what is a Haven Life doing, or what is a Zongan doing. Yes, currently some of the regulatory restrictions we might not allow us to do some of those things while we would love to do them. But nevertheless, we do closely follow and try and see whether some parts of what we do is still workable in India. So it's a combination of all of that. However, having said that, technology talent is very hot as we speak. So yes,
and in short supply.
Absolutely. So we need more. So maybe skill building in that area is very, very required.
Yes, and that certainly is a challenge that most companies that we talk to are facing today. But Puneet, what is the opportunity as far as the insurance space or BFSI in general is concerned when we talk about cloud, especially given the headroom for growth for each of these businesses? I mean, the insurance sector in India continues to be largely underpenetrated. So what kind of headroom for growth do you believe we could see?
Actually, in the 15 years since we launched AWS, I mean, cloud has not just become another technology revolution, but it's an enabler of a fundamental shift in terms of the way businesses operate and function. And quite honestly, there's no industry that hasn't been touched and no business that cannot be radically disrupted today, right? And this is as true for the insurance industry as others. I think cloud is an important enabler for insurers and financial services in general for three reasons. One, cloud helps businesses to constantly innovate and improve customer experience, like we spoke about, right? And it also helps you accelerate speed to market, get out products and services much faster, get feedback, iterate, and move on, right? So I think that's the first part. Second, I think just the resiliency and availability. We're now in a 24/7 round the clock world. Again, customers don't bother about when your offices are open and when your people are around. They want this all the time. And cloud brings round the clock availability of these services to customers. Of course, you can be global, you could be wherever you want. And then third, cloud also constantly helps you reduce the cost per transaction. And again, the interesting part of these digital transactions is that they will explode. They're not like a person walking into an insurer's office and buying a policy. You will have a large explosion in terms of these transactions, and you have to constantly keep an eye on the cost per transaction, right? So again, cloud really helps you do that. So I think in my life, Shereen, I haven't seen a bigger enabler of innovation than cloud, because it allows you to do a lot of experiments. It allows you to reduce the collateral damage of failure, because you try things, and if they don't work, you can stop and try again, as Vibha said, and then you constantly innovate, and that cycle goes on.
Well, we are living in a time where agility is the key. Adaptability and agility are the keys to business success, and that is what you're hoping technology will do for you, Vibha, and that's what Puneet is hoping the cloud will ensure for you as well. Vibha and Puneet, thanks very much for joining us here on the inaugural episode of Tech Czars. We appreciate your time. We wish the two of you the very best of luck, and look forward to many more conversations here on CNBC TV 18. But for today, thanks very much for joining us.